Welcome back to Walls Woods. So over the last couple of weeks and months, we've shown you what we've been doing out in the garden. But I wanted to do a special Father's Day video today to show you about some of the things that we're doing with the vegetables that we're getting out of the garden. So we have been blessed this year with a bumper crop of cucumbers. We've had a bunch of rain, it's been really warm, and the cucumbers are just doing gangbusters. So this is just from this morning's picking. And we picked cucumbers yesterday. So these are just guys that came in to size in the last 24 hours. And again, we're gonna have a ton of cucumbers. So what are we gonna do with all of them? We're gonna pickle them. We've got 4 boys here at Walls Woods, and they all love pickles. So we go through a lot of pickles. Last year we canned 20 gallons of pickles. This year, I think we'll easily double that number. So, some things that you need to know about canning and pickling. First of all, you need to decide what size of jar you want. These guys are the bigger ones, and they are half gallons. And those are great for us because, again, we've got a lot of boys, and then when these are ready, the kids will blow through a jar of these every 2 to 3 days. If you're not quite as adventurous or not quite the pickle eaters that we have here, you want to go with something smaller, one of these quart jars. Now, for us, for doing pickles, I think it's important that you get the wide mouth jars. Now, you can see the difference between a quart jar with a narrow mouth and one with a wide mouth. The wide mouths make it easier, especially for pickles, to get products in and out. So, one of the things that we learned last year doing pickles was that we got the wrong kind of cucumbers. We got your standard run-of-the-mill cucumbers from like a Home Depot or Lowe's garden center. So this year, we wanted to do it a little different. The cucumbers that we grew last year got way too big. When we pickled them, they got really soggy and mushy. They had good flavors, but it just didn't give us the product that we wanted. So I went online and I bought specific cucumbers for pickling. And I bought them from Johnny's Seeds, and we raised them all from seeds. I got 2 varieties. I got the northern pickling cucumber, and then I got gherkins. And as you can see, these are a lot smaller than the cucumbers that you'd buy in the store if you're going to eat just cucumber. It's important to pick these guys when they're small. If they get too big like this, not only do they not have as good a flavor for pickling, but they're also hard to fit in the jar. They take up a lot of space. So we're gonna set the great big guys off to the side, and we're gonna focus on some more of the medium, intermediate, and smaller sized cucumbers for our pickling. So one of the first things you wanna do is you wanna wash them, obviously, and then you wanna trim the ends off. Not a lot, just inspect the cucumber and move on. Trimming the ends off gets rid of the stem and the little tail, but it also allows the brine to penetrate into the pickle or the cucumber a little bit better. Okay, so I've got all the pickles trimmed up now, and you'll notice that I've got them separated here. So we're doing some different things this year. So we're kind of experimenting. So I want to see, because I've never grown either one of these kind of cucumbers before, I want to see which one makes the better pickles. So I'm keeping all the northern picklers separate from the gherkins. Now, loading the jar can be a little bit tricky, but what works for me is I lay them on its side like this, and I just work these guys in and kind of make a stack here, and I take the bigger ones first to get them on the bottom. And it can be a little tricky if you've got bigger hands, but not too bad. You just want to get them in there to try to save space and use as much of that jar as you can. So lay them on their sides, and it's kind of like a little bit of game of Tetris. And then once you get the first row done, now it's time to put anything else in that you want that is a solid. So we use jalapenos, and we use garlic. So you get a garlic dill or you get a spicy garlic dill. I don't have any of that with me right at this minute, but this is where that would go in if you were gonna do that. And then you just fill it on up And it's important that you don't want the pickles or the cucumbers to stand up above the neck of the jar because that can give you a bad seal. If it's sitting up too high, you don't want the pickles or the cucumbers to stand up above this neck, because when we fill this with brine, we want the water level to be right there before we put those into the water bath. All right, so as you can see, we've got all of our jars loaded with cucumbers. Now, you'll see here that we're actually gonna try something with sliced pickles for sandwiches, hamburgers, whatnot. Those are the larger cucumbers that we were unable to fit into the other jars with the smaller guys. So we're gonna try something a little bit different. We'll see how it works out. Okay, so we are preparing for pickling. What we've got here is we've got a brine solution started that's got water, vinegar, and what else?
Canning salt.
Canning salt. We're mixing that up, and we're gonna bring that to a boil here in just a minute. In the meantime, what we've done here to each one of our pickles is we've added a half a tablespoon of dill seed, which is these, and then a half tablespoon of dill weed to each one of these, as well as some pickle crisp. And you can pick this stuff all up in the spice aisle at your local grocery store. Dill weed, dill seed, pickle crisp, and we've gone ahead and added jalapenos to these guys, as you can see here. Jalapenos to give it a kick. And then we're going to be preparing the brine solution, and then we'll pour the brine in just before we finish up. So there's a lot of different recipes for brine solution and pickling solution that you can find online. I don't want to waste a whole lot of time in this video with that. We're trying some different things this year than we did last year. Like I said, last year our pickles ended up kind of mushy, so that's why we're doing the pickle crisp this year. Also, what we found is that the percentage of vinegar, the acidity percentage varies widely. So I've seen it as low as 2%, up as high as 7%. So we are using 7% vinegar for this first batch of pickles, and we're labeling it as such. And then we're gonna go to a 5% acidic level of vinegar for the next batch, just because the cost is just ridiculous to get the higher acidity level. So we're gonna label them as such, and then we'll, do a taste test and see which one we like better, and if it's worth the money to go get the higher level vinegar, which we've got here, this Heinz vinegar that is 7% acidity, and I had to buy this online, and this was like a $30 jug. But you can buy 4% at the store for, less than half that. So, and then we've also got Grandma's trusty recipe. And this kind of what we've been going by, but, don't be afraid to experiment with different things and figure out what you like. Just make sure that you label it, and then you remember at the end of the season, when you actually get to eat this stuff, which ones were better, and then replicate the better recipes. So we heated the brine to a boil, and now we are ladling in the brine in on top of the pickles or the cucumbers and the spices. We get it almost all the way to the top, and what we've got here, is we've got our lids warming in this water, because this helps to get this little rubber seal nice and...
Make sure there's nothing on the rim.
Yeah. You want to make sure you don't have any little dill spices or anything on the rim that would keep that from getting sealed down properly. So we're going to got a couple more jars to fill, and then we'll be ready to get these things to a boil. Now that we've got all of our jars filled with brine, we are going to bring this water up to a boil and let it boil for 10 minutes. So here's what they look like. After 10 minutes of boiling, we've taken them out and we set them on a sturdy table, because they're, the jars are very hot. And we will let them cool, and then these little rings, you hear, if you push down, you don't hear them pop. See, that one still hasn't popped. But it's not all that critical right now, but when they're cool to the touch, when you come back in, let's say, 6 or 8 hours, if that still hasn't drawn down, then that means you didn't get a good seal. But right out of the water, they don't always draw down like that. But a couple of these have already drawn down. So we'll come back and we'll check these again in 6 to 8 hours to make sure that we got good seals. Now, the toughest part of making pickles is that these things have to stay in the jar for at least 60 days. Because otherwise they're not going to take on that full flavor. So label them with the date that you canned them, and then mark it on your calendar and come back in 6 months or 60 days rather, in 2 months, and crack one open and see what you got. And then, you know, the longer that they can stay in there, the better. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. Remember to like and share and follow us on YouTube. That's going to do it for today from Walls Woods. Thank you guys, and happy Father's Day.